James Scully, welcome to An Actor Despairs. How are you doing?
I'm good. How are you? Thank you for having me.
Thank you for being here, man. It's so great. Awesome outfit.
Thank you.
Yeah, much better style than me.
No, are you kidding? We're both doing, my approach has been sort of like, what would I wear if I was actually on Fire Island? That's been like a fun way to dress for press for the movie. And I think we're both giving versions of that.
Yeah,
Vacation wear.
amazing, man.
Yeah.
Dude, you're incredible in that movie. And
Thank you so much.
I originally discovered you and you, and
Mm-hmm.
I'm sure that's probably where a lot of people discovered you.
Yeah.
And you're so good in that show. And
Thank you, man.
I often
That's so
talk
sweet.
about this on the podcast, how hard it is to kind of come in an established show, be a new character,
Mm-hmm.
and one that's kind of like on the outs with the protagonist. Spoiler.
Yeah.
But have people love you, and you
Yeah.
were so incredible in that. And watching you, Victoria, and Penn, it was just that. I love that season. It was really
Yeah.
great.
I got really lucky with the people I got to work with on that season. I mean, it's the show's going to continue running, and I can't wait to see the fourth season. I'm sure it's going to be incredible. But I do.
They're shooting in London right now, right?
Yeah, I think so. Shooting in London as Paris, I believe.
Got it.
I think he's in Paris now. Joe is, which makes sense. City of Love.
Yeah.
He's big on love. Joe is maybe too big on love, actually. But anyway, I'm really happy that I was in the season that I was in. No shade to the other seasons because Victoria, Carmela, I love so much, and then Charlie Barnett. It really was like wall to wall all stars, and so it was just like such a fun experience.
And then now with Fire Island, man, it's like it's interesting for me because I'm straight, and so like watching content, I always love great stories, and I knew Matt a little bit because I came up with. Do you know Dave Mazzoni?
Yes.
Yeah. So we went to NYU together.
Oh.
I knew Dave when he was straight, and he had, but he had Britney Spears photos on his wall.
Oh, yeah. I mean, it's always it's a journey.
Yeah. Shout out Dave Mazzoni.
Yeah.
He's the best. But man, you're so good in that, and I really enjoyed it. I thought it was a great story, and that character, it was really interesting comparing that to 40, and they're just so different, and it just is a testament to your acting. So I'm really excited to talk to you.
Yeah, thank you so much.
Yeah.
What a warm, welcoming introduction. I appreciate that.
So if it's cool, I always like to start at the beginning.
Sure.
Where did you grow up?
I grew up in San Antonio, Texas.
Wow.
Yeah.
Given the news and everything going on, what was that like?
It was not as, I think, because of the like ever-evolving political situation in that state, it's definitely like people have a preconception of what living there must be like, what the people who live there must be like. San Antonio, though, is
the Alamo, right?
That is part of the city, yes.
Yeah.
Is really, really rich in Mexican culture. And there's a lot of like first generation, second generation Mexican people who live there. Oh, sick.
Yeah,
well,
Perez.
Have you ever been to San Antonio?
I have, yeah.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
And I think growing up in San Antonio, it's like a very culturally diverse place. And don't get me wrong, there are definitely people who live there of every like race and creed who I think probably feel very attached to the conservative values that Texas is known for on like a national stage. But there's also a lot of people who aren't. Like we very nearly went blue in our last Senate race.
I remember that. Yeah.
And that's the margin now. And I think that there are a lot of people who live there who are committed to a diverse Texas that is welcoming to everyone. And I think that's reflected in like I know a lot of entertainment people that are leaving one of the coasts because post-COVID they're sort of like where I live is incidental and I don't want to live in Los Angeles or New York anymore.
Yeah.
And a lot of them are moving to Austin because they're like Texas is sort of becoming this new.
And there's no income tax, right? In
I
Texas?
don't know.
I know there's some
I
tax
should know
benefit.
how that
Yeah,
works.
yeah. File your company there.
Yeah, I mean, it might be that cynical, but it's. I don't know. When I tell people I'm from Texas, they're like, whoa.
A lot of preconceptions.
And I'm like, but not really. And especially not San Antonio. I stand in firm defense of San Antonio as a city. And did you ride horses to school? It's like, no, I rode in my parents' car.
Yeah.
Like, don't be ridiculous.
Totally.
Go Spurs go. breakfast tacos. Yeah, it was a really fun place to grow.
Barbecues, some good.
I didn't get into barbecue when I was living in Texas, weirdly enough.
Interesting.
Again, because in San Antonio, like Mexican food and the intersection of Tex-Mex, the culinary intersection of Tex-Mex is like so hugely popular that I feel like that was a bigger tradition in our family than like going to a barbecue place. Like speaking of the Alamo, there was this place called the Alamo Cafe that we used to go all of the time, and it was just amazing. There was this area in the kitchen where you could see them making the tortillas. Anyway, many happy memories there. But also something about that state that I was really important looking at it in my journey as an actor is like that attitude that people know about Texas of like everything bigger, everything better really is a part of the culture in that state. And that translates into the theater that is done there. There's so many big, successful theaters in Texas. Texas is a state that, like, even as sort of like queer and liberal as theater as an art form tends to be, Texans love it. And I think, my access to like a sound acting and arts education was very much because I lived in Texas. And I think people's attitudes towards like young people doing theater and like cultivating young people as stars. Like so many of the people I went to college with, so many of your favorite entertainers and musicians and performers are from Texas. And I think because that's a state where they're like, go for it. Yeah. Like whatever you're going to do, if it's like, and that situation evolved while I lived there. When I was in high school, there was a lot of like proposed. Like,
well, tell me, what did your parents do? How did this like imperative to get into the arts happen? Talk to me about.
So actually, my parents. So my mother's an English professor, and my father served in the Air Force for 35 years.
Oh wow!
And now does sort of like a civilian contractor job in conjunction with the Air Force. And my mother's still an English professor. And actually, I think. Ultimately, super supportive. And one of the things I often reflect on about my success, hi mom and dad, if you see this.
Shout out.
Is it's sort of like, it feels nice to be like, yeah, you did all the driving, you paid for all the classes, you bought me the tap shoes and the jazz shoes and the costumes, and you paid for voice lessons, and like now I'm a successful film and television actor.
Yeah.
So like, I feel certainly they must feel like it was worth the investment of their time and energy.
Of course.
But they were nervous at first. They were sort of like, especially when I started applying to college, they were like, a BFA seems like it might be pretty
risky,
limiting.
Yeah.
What if you got a BA? What if you what if you tried to get a sub-minor? And then, I don't know. I think at some point they just saw that like I had my head in the game, and this wasn't something I was sort of like flippantly doing. It was something that I was passionate about. No, but you know what I mean. I'm making a living doing it, and so I think they picked up on the fact that was going to be the vibe early on.
So it sounds like it was. I don't mean to interrupt. It sounds like it was musical theater that you.
Yeah, actually, that's where she started.
Okay.
And yeah, that's where it began. And then when I went to college for that, and even though...
Do you mind saying?
No, Otterbein University.
Okay.
Otterbein University. Great liberal arts university in Ohio.
For a BFA?
Yes, for a BFA in musical theater.
Wow.
The very same. And I'm not like currently really actively using the skills of singing and dancing, but I do think it was really good for my development as a person that I did that for 4 years. 8 years really, including high school.
Because you went to a performing arts high school?
Yes.
Wow.
So, yeah, went to school for that and then got to the city, and then...
Being New York City.
Yeah, New York City, sorry. One of these cities, city being New York City.
Was there a showcase program built in?
There was a showcase program built in.
How did that go?
Actually, pretty well. I'll say this, for any like young musical theater performers, acting performers, who end up listening to this, like so much pressure is put on those showcases.
It's the end of your fourth year. Yeah, it all kind of leads.
And it can feel like that's your gateway into having a career or not having a career.
Yeah.
The stakes can be so high. Don't do that to yourself. You will have other opportunities. That's a great one, and I hope you have fun. But like, it doesn't need to be. I just remember the frenzy that some of us got into around that time in college, and it's just not worth it. So do your best and have fun and be authentically you, but don't rake yourself over the coals about your college showcase.
And when you envisioned working in the dream, was it musicals? Was that where you saw yourself?
Yeah, Yes, honestly, I think, and it's funny to say this now, but at the time I was like, well, I could never be on film and television. That's for like, I don't know, like preternaturally beautiful people. I don't know. I just didn't see that for myself. And it's funny. I think a lot about my friend Lizzie Wild. Hi, Lizzie Wild, who we went to school together. Love her. Such a talented performer. And she would tell me when we were in college, she would be like, I can really see you being in film and television. And I was like, that's so nice of you, but we're not experiencing reality in the same way. And I don't know. I guess I just thought of that right now. And Lizzie, thanks for believing in me.
Shout out, Lizzie.
Shout out, Lizzie. But yeah, no, it was definitely musical theater. And I love musical theater. And more importantly, I love live theater in general.
Yeah.
The singing in school and the dancing, again, so glad I did it. But it was always about like the acting for me. And I do miss plays, man. I would love to get back on the stage. You have so much more autonomy as an actor.
Do you know Corey Campercholi? He's friends with Dave.
Okay,
I'm sure
great. Seen him probably on social media.
I took him to see this play, Which Way to the Stage. Did you?
Oh, I think I missed it.
She just did the show. Right? Yeah. Oh man, it was. I think you would have loved it.
I think so.
Hopefully,
Paul McGill choreographed it.
Yes, he did.
Yes,
you know Paul.
Mm-hmm.
Oh, that's awesome. And I'm curious, because like, talk to me. I think we're pretty much the same age. Growing up in Texas, we hinted on it earlier. There is this like cliche conservative stereotype, and coming into your own as an artist and with your identity. Did that not happen till college, or did that?
It happened actually because I went to a performing arts high school. It happened my junior year of high school.
If you're okay with talking about it.
Yeah, I absolutely am.
Yeah.
And that's, I totally respect some people's desire to be more private about those things.
Yeah.
I just want to be clear about that. But yeah, I think for me, just for me, it's important to be transparent about that stuff because there are children in Texas experiencing that painful transitional period right now.
And they still do conversion therapy in that state, I believe.
Yeah, they still do a lot of, there's some social conversion therapy happening in that like people are very unchill about it still sometimes. But high school was like I was very lucky. I was very, very lucky that something that happened my sophomore year of high school was that my sister came out to our family. And then I think it was sort of just a matter of time after that. And I reached a point in my junior year of high school where there were so many queer people around me, and there was,
Wow.
And it was a musical theater program.
It's beautiful.
And it was.
Yeah.
And honestly, every time somebody came out, I could feel myself gripped by this very deep emotion that it was like, wow, I don't even know that person, but speaking from the experience I'm having now as a closeted kid, like when I was a freshman and a sophomore, just knowing like how brave they had to be to do that, and just, and so eventually I just reached a point in junior year where I was like, I know that my family, observing my parents and my brother's response to my sister, I know that my family will handle this with grace eventually. And I also have so many friends that I think are just like ready and waiting because look, I was not fooling anybody pretty much starting from 5th grade to when I came out.
You're the glass closet, so to speak.
Yeah. Oh, that's a fantastic, that's a great way to say it. Which I kind of resent in retrospect a little bit because it's like, I don't know, still, I don't think that, I think in retrospect was the most frustrating thing that I let people do was it's hard when you're like, well, the first person who identified my queerness or brought my queerness into the conversation was a straight person and they were doing it hatefully.
Oh, it was bullying.
And I wish, I wish that I hadn't like, if I could change, I reflect a lot on if I could go back and change something, I just would have taken a lot less shit.
Yeah.
Because once I took ownership of the label of gay, it was like then people couldn't really use that as an insult anymore because it was like, yes, you have noticed and described what I am. Congratulations, your Peabody is incoming. Like, I just, I wish that I had clapped back a little bit more, but of course I had so much shame attached to it. Even after coming out, there was still a period of time where I was working very hard to make myself like a palatable gay person to the straight people around me.
You actually perfectly led me into my question, and part of the reason I asked is because I'm an actor and I went to NYU BFA program. And speaking of court, when I was there, they were essentially telling. I went to Strasbourg. They were telling all the kids like, you have to learn to play straight or
Yeah.
you're never going to fucking work,
Yeah.
you know? And I'm curious if especially because like Ohio, known to be conservative, while you were getting your BFA, was that, you know, it can be obviously different in musical theater, and I'm not trying to make a stereotype out of saying that,
I
but
think we get what you're saying. Yeah.
but do you feel like they were kind of saying that in some ways without maybe being so overt?
No, obviously musical theater makes, I think, more space for queer characters. I think it's ahead of the curve on that relative to film and television. I do think something that happened in college, and no one was doing this venomously, and something that happens to you a lot when you're a gay person is it's not so much the denigration of when you're feminine, but it's definitely that people reward you when they feel like you're performing masculinity correctly. Wow. So there was definitely a thing where it was like when I would play a very butch straight character, whatever the fuck that even means.
Yeah.
There was definitely a sense of like, oh yeah, good. Yeah, this is good because you're
stretching yourself.
Because
PTSD.
Well, no, you play gay characters as a gay person, and people are like, oh, so you're just playing yourself.
Yeah.
And it's like, would you ever fucking say that to a straight? Anyway, don't even get me started.
Yeah. No, I totally agree.
It's like you're supposed to like. And it is hard sometimes when you're like, okay, so really I'm playing two characters. I'm playing myself as a straight person, which is really just buying into like a very limited coding of behavior. It's like straight men act all sorts of different kinds of ways. And then on top of that, then you're also supposed to be playing that straight character for whoever like they are in the universe of the play. I played straight in college, and I think I don't know. It didn't come up overtly a lot. I guess I did have maybe some of my like male acting teachers were like, you are gonna have to like butch it up when you get out there, but that
I hope would not happen now.
It's better now, and it's better because I've like been playing. I mean, 40 was just sort of queer. Charlie was gay. I have been lately playing characters where that like performance of heterosexuality is not something I have to worry about.
So let's if it's cool, let's just so I can keep like a 3-act structure, if you will. How you got to New York? Talk to me about. Did you get rep at the showcase?
I did, actually. My friend who went to Otterbein, Abby Berger, hey Abby, ended up like bringing the head agent at her agency to the showcase, and then they saw me, and then they signed me. And at the time, I don't think either of us anticipated what the fruits of that labor would be, but it worked. And then
and that made you move to New York versus LA?
No, I always was going to move to New York because again, I thought theater was going to be the thing. Yeah. But so I moved to the city, and then I did a play right out of college that was fun and educational.
Can you say what it was?
Yeah, it was called Die Erkelinga, and it was about the Eric Harris and Dylan Klebold, who were the perpetrators of the Columbine massacre.
Oh, I did The Columbineist.
Yeah, it's funny because anytime I say that I did a play about Columbine, they're like, the Columbineist? It's like, no, a different one. And that was like a really cool, surreal first job experience.
Downtown theater or like
Theater Row.
Oh,
in the
East 4th Street in East Village?
No, the one on 42nd, I believe.
Got it. Okay.
And it was really cool because it was off Broadway. I got my equity card, which felt like, I was like, oh my God, I can't believe it's actually happening. Then I didn't work for 2 years.
How did you navigate that time?
I became a cycling instructor. And honestly, if you're an actor living in New York City and you're like, what do I do before I start working steadily enough as an actor to only do that? Fitness instruction, working in fitness, being an instructor.
Anything that's not serving or bartending.
Which a lot of nobility in both of those careers as well. And if those are things that you have the patience and feel like you're good at and you want to do, go for it. But if you're an actor and you're like, I need to concentrate my day into like 2 45-minute classes and not an 8-hour shift so I can be available for auditions. I need something to kind of like keep me spry. I think finding a day job is hard and painful and confusing for performers sometimes because we know in our hearts that that's not what we want to be doing.
Yeah, that's the problem.
Not to sound, like petulant or childish. Everybody has to work and earn. But yeah, I don't know. Group fitness instruction was really a good thing for me. So if you're looking
So
for...
it kept you happy during that
It
time.
kept me happy. It kept me, just like focused on wellness. I really believe that like eschewing any focus on like looking a certain way, just being active and using your body and celebrating your body every day is a good thing for people to do as they're able to. Yeah, it just mostly kept me busy for 2 years. And then I did the next stop, I guess, the next big stop. Also, actually, I shouldn't go without saying that the people that I worked with at Swerve, particularly Diane, who is the head instructor there.
Does it still exist, Swerve?
Yeah, they are now in a partnership with Crunch Gyms.
Okay.
So you can take Swerve classes like virtually and I think in person at Crunch Gyms. But Diane, who's the head instructor at Swerve, everybody, it was a very mutually, that was a community of people that really like believed I was going to be a successful actor.
Yeah.
They were like, we believe in you, we support you, like you got this. And in between Heather's and you, I went back and worked at Swerve for like another year and a half.
Wow.
So yeah, I just want to like note them as definitely a community. Jamie, Diane, the founders, people who really supported me in my life as an actor.
And during that time, is that when the film TV like auditioning started happening?
So I did these 2 Outback Steakhouse commercials.
Nice.
Yeah, actually it was. At the time,
SAG? Because I know they're often not anymore.
Actually non-union, but like I think, as I remember. But or I wasn't in the union yet, so they had to hire me as a non-union actor, but they were very generous.
Got it.
They like flew me to South Beach, Miami. I stayed in the chic hotel. At that time in my life, I was like, oh my God, I'm a fucking rock star.
Yeah.
And then seeing myself in the commercials, this sounds so dumb, especially given what my resume has been since then, but I was like, you actually look pretty okay on camera. And you're like, kind of, I don't know, you did 2 of these Outback Steakhouse commercials. And as silly as it sounds, I think, like, even though it was ridiculous at the time, and we all recognized that it was ridiculous that I was, like, in this, like, campaign of Outback Steakhouse commercials, that sort of then led into me booking my first big television job.
Which is Heather's,
Which was
right.
Heather's, yeah.
How did that come your way?
I just got to tape for it, and the musical, I mean, the movie's a classic, we love it, but the musical had recently been in its heyday in New York City, and I loved the musical, and something that a lot of the people I met with out of Showcase had said to me, because it was a show that was running at that time, was like, you would be such a good JD in Heather's the Musical, which, no, I wouldn't, I couldn't sing it with a gun to my head, but then seeing that I was going to get to audition for the television show, I was like, oh, I got to nail this, so I just worked really hard on the self-tape, I, like, got a call back, and it was funny because this was like happening while I was also really deep in callbacks for this play that I really wanted to do, and it was just an exciting moment in my life. I remember pacing the hallways of the rehearsal studio where the play was auditioning and just feeling like...
Ripley Greer?
No, it was a different one.
Okay.
That's name I can't remember.
Yeah.
And just feeling like something is about to happen. I feel that something is
You
about
felt
to
the
happen.
momentum.
Yeah, I did.
Yeah.
And then they flew me out, and I tested for Heather's, which was like such a wild...
Like for the network and...
Yeah, for like 13 different
so,
people.
Yeah.
It's so nuts. Haven't had to do one of those since, thank God. I guess I did a chemistry read for Fire Island, but it was way lower stakes.
Got it.
It was just like in Greenpoint, you
Yeah.
know what I mean? So tested, and then like that day they called me and were like, yeah, it's gonna be you. And I just like couldn't believe it. For like the next year and a half of my life, I couldn't believe it.
Wow. And that took you to LA.
Yeah, I went to LA to shoot the pilot, and then I went back to shoot the rest of the series.
So it was pilot and then picked up to series?
Yeah, it was like that's what's crazy, is for a lot of people that was just like a blip on their radar, but for me it was like, that was almost like 2 years or more of my life.
So pilot happened, and then it's like a year and a half waiting before?
No, it was
okay.
pilot happened, and then I think it was like maybe 3, 4, 5 months of waiting. Then it was like, okay, now you're going to come out and shoot. So then it was going out and shooting, and then it was waiting for the release, which became a very complicated experience.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Can you talk about why?
Yeah. No, it's just
How about
it's
this?
really sad because the conversation that was happening then that I think really complicated the release of that show is a conversation that we are now horrifyingly having again about gun violence in schools. I think that the writers expected the piece to be a satire, and instead it was I mean, a beat for beat depiction of what was actually happening in the country. And if you view it as that, if you view it as realistic television, it's of course very insensitive.
Yeah.
Nobody now, looking back, nobody now
Could have predicted.
Or would write a script like satirizing gun violence in schools, because it's like, it's just not the fact that it's still happening. There's no power to be made to making a point in that way about that subject. And it's really telling that, obviously the show got shredded here in the States, particularly my performance. It shouldn't go without saying. Ooh. And in other countries, they were sort of like, yeah, it's just kind of like a charming, provocative little show set in a high school, because those countries like did what they needed to do to make sure that their children weren't going to be. And I'm not saying like, Heathers was the most brilliant performance or brilliant television show of its time, or that I didn't deserve some of the knocks I got on my performance, but it's really telling that was like however many years ago, the better part of a decade ago, and things haven't really changed at all. Yeah. In regards to that.
Do you, in a more positive way, do you feel like that was your film school? Like learning like. I mean, I don't know if at your program they did on-camera classes.
They did, but not to the extent that would have prepared me for Heathers. And yeah, I think it was, unfortunately. You just like realize that you think it's straightforward, that you're just basically going to go and a camera's going to be pointed at you and you're just going to act like you would usually act. Yeah. And it's so much more complicated than that almost all of the time. Even scenes that you're like, well, this is just a conversation between two people. It can't be that. Yeah. It must be pretty straightforward to film this, right? It's like, no, that's almost never the answer. Which is part of, now for me, part of the joy of the job is like every scene is like putting a puzzle together and figuring out how to overcome the sort of like technical barriers of cameras and lighting and like coverage and like camera angles and piecing the scene together from that. At the time, though, it was like very intimidating, of course.
And that got you in SAG, right?
It did, yeah. Yeah. That's how I joined the union. It's how I secured more comprehensive representation for myself, which is, of course, a really important part of the equation as an actor. And it was definitely. And look, honestly, the release of that show, I loved all of the people I worked on it with, and I wouldn't trade that experience for anything because it's such a big part of who I am today. And I also, again, do stand by, especially the crime of that was like taking me out of it. So many people gave really beautiful, like fun, star-making performances on that show, and they just kind of went unappreciated. But it for my development as an entertainer, that all going the way that it did definitely instilled in me the very important lesson of like, you shouldn't expect anything in this industry. Like, it just sometimes will not go the way you expect it to. Yeah. And that's important, I feel like I left that job and went on to you. Like,
so you stayed in LA?
No, I moved back to New York.
Okay. So how long of a gap was there between Heathers and you?
Like a year and a half. It's hard to keep track because
I know it all.
The end of the Heather experience became sort of so like, it's happening, it's not happening, it's happening, it's not happening. It's hard to like track when that ended for me, but probably about a year and a half. And
did you know season 1? Because at first it was on. Wasn't it on?
No, Lifetime.
Lifetime, yeah.
And then they sold it to Netflix. And I hadn't experienced it. I'd read the book a long time ago, and I really enjoyed the book. And I was sort of peripherally aware of the show and was maybe like, oh, I'll get around to watching that eventually. Then they sent me the sides for the second season, and I was like, this is interesting. And then I watched the first episode of the show and was like, wow, this is really good. Yeah. Like, this is really good. It's really beautifully shot. It's beautifully acted. They're really successfully translating the experience of the novel onto the screen. And so then I was like, oh, I have to nail this. So I taped with my friend Lucas, and he just was very patient, and we worked very hard on it. And then I submitted the tapes. And then that casting office, David Rappaport was somebody who I'd gone in for a couple of times. And, I think the the relationship between like actors and casting directors that they go in for all the time is like such a beautiful thing. I think when the relationship develops there, that casting director is like really just looking for the right slot, right? Just being like, I wanna put you in there. I want to put you on the field. I just like don't know. You know, because it's to cast you in a show where you're not going to shine would be a disservice. So I think they are often waiting. And David,
and you had earned the stripes on Heathers, you know, regardless of what.
I think they were like, I'm sure he. And actually, I remember a moment I think about a lot. Greg Berlanti. So I booked the show. Of
course,
I booked the show. I'm very excited. I go to meet with the writers in Los Angeles at the Warner Brothers lot. I'm in the writers' room, and then this man walks in, and he's like, "Hi, I'm Greg." And I'm like, "Nice to meet you, Greg." And then it sort of clicks in my brain, and I'm like, "That's Greg Berlanti." Like,
biggest
now entertainment, like
him and Ryan Murphy are it, you know?
And he's just getting his entertainment empire. I don't know if that sounds but like that's what it is. Is only getting bigger, and it's really exciting to see. I think he's kind of a genius. Honestly, he's like very shrewd. He knows what he's doing, and he makes so much solid content. So I'm like very taken aback. I was like, oh my God, I had no idea he was going to be here. Hi, like Greg Berlanti. This man who, it's one of those things where you hear somebody's name over and over again, but it's not like I'm Googling these people, looking them up. And you never think, like, in entertainment, it seems like those people must just be
they exist in a different universe.
Of light. Just
totally.
Declaring bookings down onto us mortals. But no, he was there, and he was very sweet. And something he said was, you know, I really don't think Heather's got its due. And looking back, I think people are going to reflect on the talent that introduced to the world and see it differently, maybe. I don't know about that, because again, you know, it's
very sweet, though.
Yes.
You never get that from people like that.
No. I was like so touched. And also to, you know, Melanie Fields, Jasmine Matthews, Brendan Scannell, Grace Victoria Cox, a lot of the people, all of those people for sure, a lot of the people on that show have gone on to have very successful careers as actors. So just goes to show you, and, you know, I mean, here we are. I don't think I'm doing too shabby for myself. So I guess the most important thing to synthesize from that phase of my life is if you experience horrible rejection early in your career, take the note and keep moving. That does not mean that you're not talented. Yeah. It's important to build character. You don't want to be an entitled actor who's never had to try hard in their life, because there's nothing worse.
Oh God, I could name them right now.
Yeah, it's an ever-growing list. Yeah. But just like, you know, all of us triumphed above that, and you can too. And like also like critics, just like critical review is such a complicated thing in this country now. So just don't take it personally. Keep doing you. But yeah, in the moment in time, I was like, "Thank you, Greg Berlanti, so much."
So
really
you were in the Warner Brothers room for a screen test, a chemistry?
No, that was they didn't make me screen test for you, which was such a. I had one of those auditions. This is another thing to learn as an actor, where I flew myself out to Los Angeles for a producer callback with Sarah Schechter, hi Sarah Schechter, I love you. Sarah Gamble, the showrunner, hi Sarah Gamble, I'm obsessed with you, and David and the rest of the casting office. And it was one of those auditions where I went in, I did the first scene, they giggled and laughed and were like, great. I did the second scene and they were like, okay, thank you so much. And then I left and I was like, I fucking blew it. I flew all the way here to Los Angeles. Yeah. They didn't give me any notes. They didn't ask me to change anything. I fucking blew it. I'm not getting the role. And then, you know.
Same day?
What happened? No.
Okay.
That one I had to wait for like 2 weeks, and it was agony.
And stay in LA?
No.
Oh,
it was but when I found out I was in Los Angeles, I remember I was actually staying in my manager's house. Hi, Charles, I love you. And was like making breakfast in the kitchen, and he was sitting out on the porch, and I looked down at my phone and see that he's calling me, and I was like, ugh, and ignored it because I was like, I'm in your house. Just come talk to me. And then he shouts from the porch, answer the phone. And so I pick up the phone, and it's him and my agents being like, hey, you booked you. And it was a really nice moment. And I just sort of like laid face down on the floor and like processed.
And also the first season being such a smash hit, moving to Netflix.
We were in the middle of that happening while I was auditioning. Everyone was like, oh my God, have you watched this show? You on Netflix, it's so incredible. And I was like, if I don't book this job, I'm going to be very upset. I'm just going to be really bummed out, and I'm going to wish that I had, so I hope that I do, and I did. So just goes to show you. So if you walk into an audition and they give you nothing but a smile, sometimes that's a great sign. Mostly because that translates into something that will happen on set a lot. Yeah. Sometimes you get one take, they watch it, they're like, that was really good, we're moving on, and that's a good thing. And if nobody comes from behind the camera to tell you that you did a good job, it's not because you didn't, it's because you did exactly what you needed to do.
Yeah, there's nothing wrong.
Yeah. That was an adjustment for me. And for like a lot, like Victoria talks about that all the time, Victoria Pedretti, who's like one of the most talented actors of our generation.
How was that, working with her?
Oh, insane. Like once I found out that she was on the project, first of all, I was like...
You had seen The Haunting of Hill House?
Yeah, and I was currently obsessed with it.
Yeah.
And of course her finale monologue in that show cemented as one of the great performances of television of all time. Sorry, sound guy.
She's so good.
She's incredible, and she
and Penn is too. Shout out Penn.
Of course.
Yeah.
And he has, he has the hard job of being the backbone of that show,
and delivering voiceovers and just reacting that are going to come in post.
So Victoria, iconic. I'm working with her. It was amazing. Something about Penn I want to mention is good acting is a lot about being specific, right? Vague acting on camera is hard to watch. Penn, in those moments where it's just him like making faces basically over like 45 seconds of internal dialogue, was so specific about where am I looking, what am I thinking, how are you guys covering it, how are we telling the visual story with my face. He was so like just something to learn there, you know what I mean? And that's why it works, because you're watching him give those performances while the voiceover is playing, and they're perfectly in sync, because he was not settling for anything less than, he was like, he recognized how important those like little bits would be, and he was like not going to rest until they were perfect.
I've always been curious, and I don't know if you can answer it. Are they reading them to him?
Yeah.
Okay.
His stand-in would stand sort of off to the side, or whoever was there. Sometimes it was scripty, and they would read them. And I will say it was sometimes weird as the other actor that you're like staring at Penn making faces in silence, and somebody not on set is reading dialogue that you can't hear.
Yeah.
So you're like, what would 40 be doing during this long pause in the conversation? Like you're just staring at Penn waiting for him to start talking again, which is why it was funny. Like later in the season, they put in a little joke about like, it's really creepy when you go all quiet like that, which I so appreciated, because it was like, wouldn't I notice? Like, wouldn't I say something?
Totally.
But yeah, both Penn and Victoria, and again, everybody who worked on that show. My only regret about that season is that like me and Carmela didn't really get any scenes together. I got a couple of really great scenes with Jenna Ortega, who, much like Victoria, truly one of, I think, the most competent, lovely actresses like I've ever worked with. It's such an inspiration to see somebody so young who is so self-possessed and who like knows what she needs to do, goes out on set, does it, is so sweet to everyone there. She's somebody who I think is like we're going to continue to see in everything for a long time.
Like you, man. Like I said in the intro, you were so good in that show.
Thank you very much,
dude. It was so hyped up, and you come in, and
we did deliver. It was a weird pressure being like, whoa, the first season was so good, and everybody loved it. We really need to,
I guess it was Victoria was new as well, right? Yeah, you know,
she was less intimidated though. You know what I mean? She was like, of course she got stressed sometimes, but she is really, as much as she'll be like, I hope that I'm giving them what they want, she really will just like fearlessly step in front of the camera and give like the performance. And it's been really satisfying, especially with the third season. No spoilers, but everywhere that she has to go in that season, seeing people continue to be like, wow, this girl is really something special, because she is.
And you are very much, and I'm curious, you'll figure out why I'm asking, what year did that air?
2019. Just before yes. So
it was right before
December
the pandemic.
26th of 2019. So basically 2020. Yeah.
So then that's what I want to address is like, you have this major show. You're amazing on it. People love your character. I'm sure there's no shortage of offers, I would hope, coming your way.
Not yet.
Yeah.
We're getting there.
All right, cool. But then a lot of good auditions.
Yes.
And
definitely up to the game.
You know, in hindsight, a pandemic is coming.
Yes.
So did that, like, did some things not come together because they were going to go and then pandemic ended it? Or, talk before we get to Fire Island. I'm just curious, talk to me about your pandemic.
Yeah, the pandemic was a little, what can I say?
Yeah.
Because it was on the spectrum of what everybody experienced during that time in history. I had it very, very easy. Obviously, speaking from inside my personal experience, yes, it was very confusing and unpleasant. But I just feel so lucky that I didn't lose anyone. I didn't, I was never without a place to stay. I didn't get it until late January of this year.
Yeah.
I just was very, very fortunate in my experience of the pandemic. That said, for me, it was kind of Heather's was this promise of a kickstart to my career, and then for reasons out of anyone's control became very complicated. You then came around and it was finally, I'm in a show. Yeah. People like the show. The show has come out. People are responding to it. People are appreciating my performance. I feel very validated. I feel very confident. And then COVID happened. And it was kind of again, just don't have any expectations. You just never know what's going to happen. And I also won't pretend that I am very fortunate that I got to continue to audition for things during the pandemic. Obviously, there was a learning curve. I beg your pardon. Of a couple of months of adjusting to this new landscape. But since we're at 41 minutes, jumping to Fire Island. An interesting thing about Fire Island is the first time I auditioned for it, I think was March of 2020.
Oh, wow. So
it was
early.
going to be on Quibi, and back when Quibi existed, rest in peace, Quibi. And I auditioned for it then, and then
as a movie or not, or as a series?
Well, as a movie, but on Quibi, everything gets released in 15-minute chunks.
Yeah.
So then I didn't really hear anything for a year and a half, and
from Fire Island.
Wow. And then it sort of came back around, and then I was sort of oh, what's happening with this? And then I realized oh my god, now it's at Searchlight, and
at that time Bowen had blown up on SNL.
Yeah, and just the whole job had gotten an upgrade. I think people had recognized the the potential of Joel Kim Booster's script. I think attaching Andrew on, I should talk to him about the finer points of that experience, because his guidance really made the movie. The combination of Joel's script and Andrew's direction and their understanding of each other and the material as people is what has made the movie what it is. And Bowen's heartbreaking nuanced performance, and Conrad just being completely irresistible as Mr. Darcy, and Tomas being hysterical, and Matt Rogers giving the best one-liners of all time.
He's so funny.
And Nick Adams being a pitch perfect Cooper. And by the way, every time I do press, I have to say Nick Adams, who plays Cooper in the film, one of the sweetest people in real life.
Aww.
Would never behave that way.
Yeah.
But he's so good at it. It's funny sitting through screenings. I feel sometimes people don't even know how to react, because he gives such a juicy, chilling performance that you're just transfixed by the horrible audacity of this person.
And it's been interesting for me, because as a straight guy, I feel there was this mandate, after 2017, and then obviously during the pandemic, I think we saw a lot of it of LGBTQ representation and the need for it. At first they were just doing things, but they've been making great content and not just doing it to virtue signal. They've been doing it because it's authentic and it's real, and it's that community exists, and it's a really good script. So when you, this is kind of an obvious question, but when you got it, did you know it was that good? Because so much of movies come together later,
100%.
Yeah.
And there were huge changes from the Quibi script to the Searchlight script.
Interesting.
And I do think, and I don't think Joel would think this was shady, but I do think that the Searchlight script became, because he was no longer thinking about dividing it into 15-minute segments.
And audience so much. Yeah.
It became, right. I think Searchlight allowed him a little bit more wiggle room. And so I do think the script got stronger. And then reading it, coming back to it, I was now more than ever, really, queer joy. The market right now is just a little depressed in general, I think, because of the COVID of it all. Yeah. I think people want to watch stuff that makes them happy.
Bright content,
and again, something we've returned to a lot in press is that so many queer stories that have been told up till now have been very focused on the catharsis of like unpacking queer trauma.
Yeah.
And those stories are important, and we need to keep telling them. But it's like that shouldn't be the only kind of entertainment available, especially to young queer people who need a light to look for. You know what I mean? So I think reading the script and being like, it's so silly and it's so unapologetic, and at the end it is just like deeply happy in a very simple, sweet, earnest way. After doing another thing that I think is so important, which is inspecting the ways, not that straight people are cruel to queer people, because we've seen a lot about that, but unpacking the ways that we're unfair to each other. I think it's been really exciting being out on the island, giving that kind of person a name and a face has, I think, really empowered people on the island to feel like now they like know it when they see it, and they can be like, we're not doing that anymore in 2022. Like, Coopers are the butt of their own joke, and it's
resenting
we're just like not. I think people are galvanized to be like, we can expect more of ourselves as a community, and we're hopefully like, I hope that the movie makes a lot of people who feel like there wasn't a space for them on Fire Island feel excited to go there, and when they get there, like, really emphasizing as a community that people like that are like should not. It's like, if that's what you're bringing to a shared queer space, especially that's supposed to be a safe haven for all of us, don't come.
And how do you, if you don't mind me asking, your own experiences on Fire Island?
I was really nervous to go to Fire Island when I was invited. My boyfriend was like, I got a house this summer, do you want to go? And I definitely had, I know, like in the movie, I played Charlie, who is a very privileged experience of being a queer person. I am obviously white. I'm obviously male-bodied. I've had a very privileged experience of being a queer person. But that doesn't mean I haven't had moments where I was like chastised or bullied or teased for not adhering to some like whatever. I actually, it's funny, just before I went the first time, I was like at a queer beach in Los Angeles and like elected to keep my shirt on, just like wasn't having a good day, was a little worried about the COVID of it all, and just was kind of spinning out. And there was somebody there who just took it upon themselves to really make it an issue that I was keeping my shirt on. And it's just like, that stuff happens.
Yeah.
And again, I'm not saying that was like a deeply traumatic experience.
Totally.
But it's like, we're still doing this? Like, just let everybody fucking live.
Be yourself.
Any of us as queer people are lucky to be alive and lucky to be in a headspace and geographically in a literal place where we can gather together safely. So like, if you have the privilege of showing up to a space like that where you feel like you can safely be queer in the company of other queer people, just like, do not worry about how other people are expressing their queer joy. Is just none of your business. Just like, cut each other some slack. And also, when you see that behavior, don't be afraid to course correct that person, because
it's important to do so.
Yeah.
And when did you guys film?
We filmed God, when did we film? August and September of last year.
And was it as fun as it looked?
It was. I think we felt the pressure of being like, this is an important story, and if we're going to tell it, we need to do it well. Studios and networks are still not giving like just huge space to queer stories.
Right.
I think for Searchlight and Hulu, maybe, I don't know how they felt about it, but perhaps it felt like a bit of a gamble to bet on this very sort of like,
because Hollywood for so long
sweet,
did the Brokeback Queer for straight people.
Our target audience was not straight people,
which is huge.
Right, and also we weren't telling a story that was like already a familiar carved road in the canon of queer cinema. So the fact that that definitely weighed on us while we were on the island. I think we were definitely aware of how lucky we were to be there and the opportunity we were being given, and also just like the pressure as a queer person to be exceptional in general. I think it oscillated between being like such an amazing, affirming time and then being like, oh my God, what is going on? Like, is it going well? Like you said, movies come together later. I think at the time we were all sort of like,
is it working?
Yes. Like, am I doing what I'm supposed to be doing? And we did. I've seen the movie multiple times now, and a lot of it is like Andrew just understanding visually how to tell a story, and like finding the strengths of his actors and like accentuating and finessing those in the edit. But I'm really, really proud of what we made, and it seems like being back on the island and just like looking at the response on social media, other people are really proud of what we made.
Yeah,
too.
you're incredible in it. And was it
Thank
nice
you.
to get away, because 40 operates at such a high energy level. Was it nice to kind of be able to...
It was nice to be a sweetie for once.
Yeah.
On set, it sometimes, because my job was, I wasn't supposed to be like hysterical like the other girls in the cast, and my job was just sort of to be like earnest and sweet. Sometimes on set, it felt like, am I doing anything?
Yeah.
40 was every scene. It was like, you're swinging a knife around, and you're doing coke, and you're
snapping a pen.
And like, yeah, exactly. In Fire Island, it was just like I sort of entered, and also like frequently, obviously, Charlie was made to feel kind of flustered and awkward.
Yeah.
And on set, it's kind of difficult to distinguish between like being flustered and awkward as the character and being flustered and awkward as a person.
James, yeah.
I was like, oh God, So, yeah, but it was then watching it back, it's like we all understood the assignment. And I don't know if you saw something that's happened today. It was like the first thing I saw when I woke up is there was some feedback that the movie got that we failed the Bechdel test.
I don't know what that is. Forgive my ignorance.
No, so Alison Bechdel, as like a way of assessing film, was like, does the movie have any scene where two women are alone together on screen discussing something that is not a man? That's not like about their relationship with men or their orientation via men. So that's like just a way of like looking at a movie and being like, are there any feminist undertones in this film? So people were like, this film doesn't, which is because it was like a story about like two queer Asian men and their experience on the island. That wasn't really the point. But so like that response, people sort of were like, every movie can't tell every story. And the story that this movie was telling was already groundbreaking and special to a lot of people.
Yeah.
So we don't need to then like hold a meter stick up to it and be like, sorry. And that was very much the response from people online. And then I guess this morning or last night, Alison Bechdel, as in the Bechdel test, tweeted like, I've made a corollary to the Bechdel test that is like, basically she gave the film her endorsement and was like, I'm not going to allow my assessment to be used to damage this film that I think is wonderful.
Amazing.
Yeah. And that reading that was like such a, and all of that happening on Twitter, which we were like, what is Twitter going to do with this movie? What are they going to think? The fact that Twitter was coming to our defense and that it became a place of celebration of the film was it was a great way to start the day. That's all I'll say.
Congratulations.
Thank you
were
so
so
much.
incredible in that.
Yeah.
And I'm so curious to talk to you about, what do you want to do next?
Because
I know you got two projects that you probably can't talk about.
Well, no, I can talk about the Untitled Julio Torres project. I'm very excited about it. I think it's much like every other thing he has ever given us.
Is it that's the one with Tilda, right?
Yes, it's special and interesting.
Tilda Swinton,
and
by
fun.
the way, name drop.
Yes, icon of stage and screen, Tilda
yeah.
Swinton. I think people are really, really, really going to love it, and I think it's just going to be yet another
And you're in
edition.
that now?
Yes.
Okay, cool.
Oh, well, I was. We filmed just after I finished Fire Island. They started principal photography for that, and that's going to be coming out relatively soon, sometime in the next year, I believe. Although don't hold me to that.
Everything
I
changes,
actually have no fucking idea.
Yeah.
It's funny when you're an actor, people think they're emailing you on every update, and it's like they're not.
No.
You like probably 2 or 3 months before the premiere get a premiere date.
You don't even know if the scene you shot's gonna be in the thing.
Say that. Which don't take that personally either.
Yeah.
It's just not about you. You know
It's
what
the
I mean?
editor.
It's making the story. They cut a lot of stuff from Fire Island, and honestly, I think watching the movie now, it being like as fast and effective as it was and just sort of clipping along, I think we're all like, yeah, that was the right decision. You know, every scene has to serve a narrative purpose and you don't want things to be redundant. Anyway, so yes, Untitled Julio Torres project. And then the thing I'm working on now, it's a show called Titans. It's on HBO Max. I can't really tell you. Thank you very much. Teen Titans was like a huge deal for me as a young person. So now being on Titans is yet another
the reimagining of it?
It's the live action version.
Got it.
Is like such a dream come true. Like 13-year-old James is kicking himself. He cannot believe it. He's so excited and proud of me, which is a nice feeling to have. I can't really tell you anything about what I'm doing on the show, but it's been a lot of fun, and I love that cast.
We'll keep our eye out
and
for
that
it.
creative team. It's another Berlanti property, and again, he just knows what he's doing.
And he likes you.
I want to believe so.
Yeah, he does.
You know?
Discover me. My name's Ryan Perez. You can look me up, Greg.
He seems really sweet. Yeah, and then after this, I think, again, it's like there was a time in my life where I thought I would never be able to play a queer character, and now I've played several.
Do you want to play straight?
I don't know. I did it for 16 years.
You're a very good-looking
pretty
guy.
early on in my career. And
you could play Superman,
Okay, if it was to play a superhero, yes. Here's the thing.
Yeah.
Here's my thing.
And I don't mean to sound ignorant by asking that question, please. I'm sorry.
I want to do all sorts of different things as an actor. But if the assignment is you just need to move your hands less and deepen your voice, and there's no source of why the character would be doing that. You're just saying that to me because you're straight men, even just average, normal, run-of-the-mill straight men have to behave a specific way, and because of the way you look, this is the way you have to play the character. I'm not doing that anymore. Yeah. I'm not going to re-closet myself to play just some straight guy where it's okay, why does this straight man have a deep voice?
Just to play straight.
Why? Yeah, I don't... Yeah. That's not, again, the hat on the hat of it all. It's just not a journey I'm interested in taking. It's also so funny because the reaction to 40 was so split on what people thought his sexual identity was. It's all so subjective. Yeah. It just
they never really clarified.
No, because they don't fucking need to. Is the other thing. Yeah. I'd also love to play characters where their sexual identity is just not really relevant to the story, and they just maybe exist ambiguously as queer people, but it doesn't have to be fed down the audience's throat. Because I'm no longer meeting people and being hi, I'm James and I'm gay. You know what I mean? It just doesn't need to be so on the nose. But to play Superman, I think we're pretty deep in that canon. I don't know that there's going to be an opportunity.
Well, they're
for that
rebooting it now, so
you're joking. Just the Superman movies?
Well, I know DC's going to do a show, so I think there's
but not with Henry Cavill.
That is out of I've heard things. I've heard things.
We don't know. Like we said, we don't know.
Yeah. It might be him.
I would play straight to play a superhero. Although again, I would rather play whoever the villain is, who hopefully has horns and shoots lasers out of his eyes. You know what I mean?
Way more fun. Yeah.
Way more fun. Comic book villain. That's what I would love to do next.
Totally.
Yeah.
You're incredible. Please come back when Titans and the Torres Project.
Be so lovely.
I could talk to you all day.
Yeah.
I end this interview on every interview with the same question, and I apologize because I know it's a deep one.
No,
but
go for it.
For the young James out there and all the young people listening, gay, straight, trans, let's just make it all artists in general.
100%.
Who are coming, we're still not really out of a pandemic, and they feel very lost, and maybe they can't come out of the closet, or maybe they're straight, and they just want to enter this business, and they have no idea how. Any advice you might have?
Yeah, I would say, first of all, just really, really be yourself. We are more and more entering an era where people want to see television that has that quality of a person bringing their authentic self to imaginary circumstances. So don't limit yourself or your creativity or your craft by being oh, well, I think they want this smaller, less interesting version of me, so that's what I'll try to be. Don't do that. Don't do that, especially not if you're queer. Yeah. Because if you're queer in the world today, you probably have a really interesting story to tell, and people probably need to hear it. So don't ever dim your light. And take classes, I know it's hard. Things are so expensive. So expensive. There's definitely a paywall around the industry right now, and I don't know. There are places you can find where you can get access to that kind of education for less expensive, but it's a hard truth about the industry that it's an expensive thing to be an actor, even though so often we make not very much money. And just, if it's important to you, a lot of people issue that advice that it's if you're good at anything else, do that. I don't really think that's very helpful.
Yeah, I agree. Yeah.
If it's important to you, we only have so much time on this planet. Make the bet on yourself. Yeah. Believe in yourself. Do the thing. If it really feels important to you that you're I'm an actor, I want to be an actor, and I think that I have something to say, try. Yeah. And don't be ashamed or afraid if it doesn't work out or if it's difficult, because it's always going to be and just, be gentle with yourself. And especially if you're a queer person, my number one thing, because this is something that I've really found with the Fire Island cast, is find a community of other artists that believes in you, and then support each other. That's what we have to do as queer people, but especially as queer artists. Just like find people whose work excites you, and be present and a positive force in their life. And like, one day you might end up in a gay movie with all of your friends.
James Scully, man, I am so proud of you. I'm
Thank
so
you very
grateful to you
much.
being here. You have an incredible future. I hope we
Thank
get to
you
work
so
together
much.
one day.
Yeah, hell
and
yeah.
dude, you're fucking badass. And let's
Thanks,
hang in the
man.
neighborhood sometime.
Yeah, hell yeah. Hit me up.
Yeah.
Okay, thanks,
All right.
guys.